Hi there, I'm John from CNCKing.com, and today we're going to make a horse stall sign using metal and wood. For such an amazingly simple sign, it's amazing how much goes into making something like this. Now the top layer here, as you can maybe tell, is actually metal. These are actually the screw holes, so you'll screw it in and then you'll paint it the same color as the rest of the horse, so you won't see the screw holes. And the back here is actually 3/4 inch pine. Now you're wondering why this is dark is because I flamed it. And the reason why I flamed it is to preserve the wood, for one thing, but also to give it the contrast against the metal enameling that I did. Almost as a given, whenever something comes off the waterjet, it needs to be tumbled or it needs to be sandblasted. The reason for that is for two. One is to remove the surface rust that builds up almost instantly onto the surface amongst the oxygen and the air in the waterjet, or the water in the waterjet goes onto the surface of it. And the other reason is to remove underneath here, there's generally like a little kerf that builds up, because the waterjet is basically using sand and high pressure water to push down onto the metal, and it just happens to go through it, and as a result you get like a little ledge all the way around, and that's what the sandblasting removes. It's maybe a fraction of a millimeter. You can feel it with your finger whenever it's there, but it's very easy to remove. The sandblaster or other things that we do for customers is we actually tumble it. So let's say you had 1,000 of these things that you needed done. Tumbling might be a more efficient process than sandblasting one at a time. cool with the sandblasting process is that after I sandblasted this, I actually let it sit around in the shop for a couple of weeks. And the reason for that is because I was busy doing customer projects, and I do these videos between customer projects. So whenever I get a lot of projects, all of a sudden, well, then, any of these kind of videos and the demos that I build up for them sort of go on hold. Now this thing here sat on a bench for probably 2 to 3 weeks between the time that you see it here and the time that it was actually waterjet, and there was no rust built, nothing built up onto it, and that's a really cool process. But the problem is, if right away I put it outside, again, it's metal, and any kind of humidity, it starts to rust again. So that's why it's very important to enamel. And in this case here, there's a lot of different colors for enameling, but I wanted a nice silver color, just to contrast against the wood which I burned the other day. You might say to yourself, well, why bother cutting a very thin layer of metal and putting it over wood? Why not just make the whole thing out of metal? Two reasons for that. Two reasons for a lot of things, apparently. Number one is I wanted a very strong surface on it, because it will go outside and in the elements. And more importantly, if I made this thing out of 1-inch steel, it would be incredibly heavy. And although durability would be really, really nice on it, it would actually look kind of nice over the time as it rusts away. I just wanted something very thick, but not very expensive. Because again, whenever we do projects for our customers, budget always comes up. It's one of the most important numbers I need to know. And for something like this to waterjet, waterjet's very fast when it's very thin metal, but when it's very thick metal, it's incredibly slow and expensive process. So not only do you have the cost of the waterjet and the abrasive and all the other stuff involved with that, you also have the cost of the metal. And we can avoid all of that simply by using 3/4 inch pine. And as you can see, it looks perfectly fine. And actually, I would easily argue that this looks better than do the whole thing out of solid steel. Question for you. What did people use to preserve wood before there were wood preservatives? Now, something that people would actually do is get woods like cedar that are naturally preservative qualities to them. But if you go to Japan and China and other countries where they don't have that kind of wood, or the wood wasn't strong enough, or for whatever reason they didn't use it, something they used to preserve wood was actually just to burn it. And it's a really nice process. It's really quick to do with a blowtorch here. That's how I did this. And the advantages to overusing paint, number one is, if I did this in paint and it starts to rain and snow and ice and all this other stuff, that paint is coming off. There's nothing I can do to keep that paint onto the surface of the wood, because it's on the surface or just a little bit absorbed by the wood. Now if I burn it, as you can see here, there's nothing to come off. It's charcoal. And charcoal is a really nice material because nothing really grows on charcoal. And as a result, it's a very good way to preserve wooden projects, is actually just to burn them. And then when you burn them, nothing grows on it. It stays really nice. It might rain and a little bit of charcoal will, seep down a little bit, but after 1 or 2 rains, it's fine. And it's one of the methods I like to use here in the shop to preserve projects for customers who want their signage outside, made out of wood, but want something that's going to last incredibly long amount of time. That isn't immediately apparent is that when we laser cut pine, we're actually burning through the pine. Let's take a look at the scrap that this came from. Here's a scrap board here, and you can see all the way around the nice dark charcoal look all the way around. See, it looks actually pretty cool. So this I might actually end up just cutting with the angle cutter, and then what we'll do is put it on the wall and put like a contrasting something on the back of it just to give it a bit more looks. But something to keep in mind whenever we use the waterjet is sand and water cutting through the material, but it's cutting through abrasion, meaning that it's almost like sandpaper scratching the surface of it until it goes all the way through. Now when it comes to laser, it's a different process. It's not actually cutting, it's more of a burning away process. So it's a little bit like a magnifying glass, and what it's doing is burning layer by layer by layer by layer. And because our laser is so powerful, it looks like one seamless process, but actually what's happening is it's just vaporizing material all the way till it goes all the way through. So if you're looking for custom horse signage or any kind of signage, literally coasters, whatever you need, keychains, we do a lot of those things out of acrylic using the laser as well. Contact me at CNCKing.com and we'll make it for you.